It's becoming part of the health, part of the National Health Authority. Then the e-Sanjeevani platform, the Diksha platform. So all these platforms are, what they are doing is that they are offering various kinds of services, education services, healthcare services to people. The ONDC which is coming up, it will disrupt the e-commerce market all over. So what is doing, all these investments, all these projects in the digital public goods that we are building is empowering people in every way. But I would refrain from saying that yes, we have arrived and there's nowhere else to go. We have a lot many projects to implement, lot many people to reach. Digital inclusion is a very important subject that we are trying to address. We have a network of 500,000 common service centers, but to ensure that every Indian who does not even have a smartphone or who does not even know how to operate an app, how does he access services? So for that, on the Umang app, we have built in voice-enabled services. So the day when we will be able to access all public services through a feature phone, through a toll-free number, or speaking to an app, just like we speak to a Siri or Alexa, and be able to track our passports or driving license or ration cards, and then talking to the apps in the language of our choice. Sure. That day when we will be able to do that, then only we should say we have arrived. So there's a lot more things to do as we build on these projects.
I remember, Mr. Singh, last year, I think in the month of September, if I remember correctly, you'd given yourself a target that in 2 years' time, all citizen-facing interfaces will go digital. I'll come back to you on that issue in just a bit. But let's also get Mr. Satya Narayana in on this conversation. He's joining us virtually. Mr. Satya Narayana, if you can hear me, the question I want to ask you is that just along the lines of what Mr. Singh had suggested, there is significant economic potential to be unlocked. In fact, a recent study by NASSCOM suggested that the figure that we're looking at in terms of economic potential to be unlocked is north of $700 billion. So those are the kind of numbers we're talking, very large numbers. Your sense in terms of the role that these open digital platforms will be playing going forward up until 2030 to unlock that economic potential?
Thank you. Good evening to all the co-panelists and participants. Really, it's my pleasure to participate in this event virtually though. Let me step back a little bit to answer this question as to how to achieve that lofty figure in billions, which is potential at this point of time, but can it be made real? When we are talking of public digital platforms, actually we need to differentiate three things which are being talked about. One is digital public goods, second is public digital platform, which is the theme of the session, and third one is digital ecosystem. Each one is increasingly bigger in scope and scale of operations and complexity. Digital public goods is about being open standards, open source, open data, open APIs, open AI models, and so on. Public digital platform is about delivery of public services. Abhishek has just mentioned the top of the chart items just now. And the third is the highest in the ecosystem is the digital ecosystem, and the focus is on obviously on ecosystem where the public, private, NGO, civil society, everybody is coming together to make a difference to the stakeholders. Where the key word there is interoperability. So we have examples in the making in the health sector like National Digital Health Ecosystem, NDA in the education ecosystem, and IDEA, which is upcoming, which is in the agriculture sector. So to address the question of how to exploit the potential, we need to look at all the three. It's not that either or. We need all the three formats of digital transformation. Now, having said that, let me also mention what is required. What are the requisites of a public digital platform? What are the characteristics it should satisfy? I would list three as mandatory for all these platforms to comply with. One is it should substantially enhance the UX of the customer, as just mentioned before me. That is the efficiency, transparency, and convenience of the citizens and businesses which interact with the system. That is the bottom line. The second is empowering the end users so that they are in control and they have a choice, in what kind of a option they are going to take. It's not something that either take it or leave it. There is a choice to the citizen. And third and most important is the protection of the individual rights like privacy and security. So these are the minimum mandatory requirements that any public digital platform should satisfy. I'm sure that in terms of the billions of transactions that we are going through in the 3 top platforms, so obviously these mandatory requirements have been long met. Now what is desirable set of requirements going forward, which also are available to a large extent in these platforms is, one is, I would say, open, open and open, meaning open standards, open source and open APIs. Second one is establishing level playing field for all the players so that the big and the small players, the technology players, have a equal opportunity of participating in the ecosystem. Third one is enabling interoperability. They say that data is new oil, data has got $500 billion of potential in India alone, etc. But for it to be realized, we need the interoperability through standards and protocols. Then at the end of the day, we have to operate at the population scale. It's not that you do a pilot in one district or something, and it should operate pan-India. So that's one of the characteristics of a public digital platform. Then what are the kind of enablers if we have to achieve the big targets that we have in mind? So I would say that we need 4 Ps. It's a 4P formula. We need a set of policies in the first instance for data management, data governance, data security, data privacy and procurement of various platforms or services. The second P is about the platform itself, the public digital platforms. In all the sectors, we need to have such public digital platforms, especially the priority sectors of the country. And the third P is about protocols and standards and specifications and open data formats so that interoperability is assured in the run. And last but not least is the partnerships that are required between public and private. The government should be more of an enabler rather than trying to build all the platforms themselves.
Those are some very interesting insights.
So for that, we need the
you've given us the 4 Ps, perhaps something that the government can bear in mind. But Mr. Koshi is also with us. Mr. Koshi, if I can get you in on this conversation, we're talking about concepts of openness, of interoperability, as Mr. Satyanarayana suggested. You're, of course, leading the charge for one such vertical, ONDC, taking forward. What are the major challenges going forward? We're talking about the likes of Microsoft, Snapdeal that have already come on board. But what are the challenges that you're facing in terms of the role that you see the private sector entities playing? And this, I'm speaking in reference to the heavyweights that we're speaking of in the retail e-commerce space. How much of a challenge is that in terms of having a happy marriage, so to speak, between an open platform like ONDC and some of the closed-door facilities and systems like we have the e-commerce giants?
Thank you. Now, first of all, when we say open network, what it is attempting is to democratize. What does it mean? It means that everybody has the equal opportunity to present what they want to offer. Nobody can claim superior power because of the captive set of users in any side of it. So the scale ceased to be the lever, but innovation and specialization become the lever. So whether you are small or big, you have equal opportunity to be discovered. And if you have something really good to offer, then you get discovered more. Not because you have somebody who's always captive. So in that context, when ONDC enable large number of unbundled, specialized building blocks of commerce, let's say, when a buyer application comes, he says, my loyalty is only to my buyer to help him make the best buy. Let me go and buy whatever that is best for him. I don't have anybody seller I want to push. When the seller application comes, he says that, let me try to offer something really good so that people want to discover me.
Sure.
So there's no conflict of interest that is coming. So in that context, it becomes inevitable for everybody to join. When every buyers come together in the open network, the market become $1 billion plus. It's nobody's father's property. So now if somebody decides that I have a small group of 50 million people, he become irrelevant.
Sure.
So it become natural compulsion for current large players to come. When you say large, do they have a predominant market in India? No. We understand that the total market penetration of digital commerce is only 7%, and on the seller side less than 1%. So when it has to reach 50 to 60%, everybody has to grow, and then today's biggies become irrelevant if they don't cope up.
So if I've understood you correctly, what you're saying is that it's inevitable for even these larger companies to in fact come on board and be a part of the system. Is that correct?
Yes, it is inevitable, because when the 7% penetration become 50% even, you need a lot more to come. You saw the same thing happening in UPI. Sure. And so it is not taking away anybody's market. It is collectively attacking a larger market, as envisioned by the government and the Honorable Prime Minister, that all of us going to be digitally enabled. It doesn't matter big or small.
Great. Let's also get Mr. Deshpande in on this conversation. He's joining us virtually. Mr. Deshpande, very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. You, of course, are a part-time member with the UIDAI. The journey of Aadhaar has been quite interesting, to say the least. What we've seen over the last few years in terms of the initiative taken by the government, there were on some occasion challenges from the civil society. The matter also landed before the court on the ideal use cases of Aadhaar. Just your quick thoughts. Aadhaar, where it stands today, 99% of the adult population having been covered, and now with Aadhaar also being contemplated above and beyond government benefits to also considering vetting of electoral rolls. Your quick thoughts on how far the journey has come and what the criticisms have been, especially on some of the more recent use cases.
Sorry, I can't hear anything at all.
Hi, Mr. Deshpande. Am I audible to you? Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I think we are having technical difficulty, but I'm not able to follow any of the conversation at all. The audio line is not clear.
I'll just take a minute. I think I'll request my production team to in fact touch base with you once again and to get more clarity there. Hopefully we'll have him in just a couple of minutes on a better line. But Mr. Singh, coming to you on one of the issues that I said we'll come back to you on, is that last year you had given yourself a target. Look, in 2 years' time, all citizen-facing interfaces will slowly turn digital. A 2-year target is what you'd given us. We're nearly at the halfway mark. How far have we progressed, and what are the challenges that you're facing in terms of allowing for digitization of these interfaces?
I must say, most high-volume citizen transactions have gone digital.
Sure.
Like if you look into numbers, all digital services across the Government of India and state governments are on the Umang platform. Umang had around 400 services, public services across central government and state governments around a year back. Today we have around 1600 services. So more and more services have added on. There are some states which are a bit slow in putting up, and we are working on bringing those services. But by and large, most services have come on the Umang platform. They have gone digital. What we need to do and what we need to work on is to make sure that the services are end-to-end digital. It's that one should be able to access service digitally and get the final outcome also digitally. And when we are getting the final outcome digitally, it should go into the DigiLocker so that it's easily accessible. Well, it should not happen that you just make an application and then it requires a online to offline kind of interface when you have to go physically somewhere. So for getting the services. So most services have gone digital to that extent. The real challenge that we are working on now is that how do we make it available in all Indian languages? Sure. For that, the Bhashini project is working on providing open APIs for ensuring that language interface is built in, because India has got 22 official languages, and till we make every service available in the language of a person's choice, it will not be truly digital. And the second will be voice enablement of services, about which I just spoke about.
Interesting. But even as we're discussing these digital services, it's important to keep in mind that the Aadhaar serves as the backbone as far as Digital India is concerned. And Mr. Deshpande, I understand, I'm being told, is back with us, and hopefully he can hear me this time. Mr. Deshpande, a quick question to you, that as far as Aadhaar is concerned, it has been the backbone. It continues to be the backbone as far as Digital India services. My question to you is that the journey of Aadhaar has not been an easy one. It's been a tumultuous one. We've seen initiatives by the government, we've seen criticisms from civil society, and even as recently as just a few days back, there were criticisms that came forth with respect to the use of Aadhaar for vetting of electoral rolls. So just your quick thoughts on this journey that Aadhaar has had to undertake, and what these criticisms have been, and your response to those criticisms in terms of use cases for Aadhaar. Mr. Deshpande.
So predominantly Aadhaar has been used as a place for keeping digital identity of individuals. And as far as the Aadhaar records are concerned, we provide yes, no or eKYC type feedback to various applications that want to use it. Now, this is a very powerful mechanism where you now know who the individual is and you can track that individual. Basically, you can get that individual's identity for any application that you need. So a lot of how it gets used depends on the application, and there are several checks and balances that are there in the Aadhaar system to ensure that individual's identity can be protected. So I think there are ways to make Aadhaar very effective and useful for people to use while maintaining individuals' privacy.
But again, Mr. Deshpande, if I can get you back on that question, that while there are, government does say that there are inbuilt protections and safeguards in place, the question that has been put across as far as the use of Aadhaar is concerned, that should we just limit it to extension of government benefits? Or would it also be fair to take it a step forward for vetting of electoral rolls and other such use cases? That's the distinction that some of the critics are sought to make. Your quick thoughts on that?
See, the Aadhaar system on a technical basis allows you to do deduplication of records. That is the main advantage that Aadhaar can provide. So I think it's for the government or anyone else who wants to use it specifically for deduplication. Aadhaar tends to be very useful. Now, most of the data that is being collected in other sources does not necessarily have any, it just has a pointer from Aadhaar that allows it for deduplication. Aadhaar itself has no evidence or information about the electoral records or any other records that are being kept outside. So as a technical place where you can use this infrastructure for deduplication, Aadhaar is very useful. And to that extent, if it can be used in other places where deduplication is very important, then the Aadhaar system is well set for doing those kinds of things. But in itself, Aadhaar is not deciding where it should get used. All we do is to provide information about whether this person exists as identified by the Aadhaar system.
Mr. Singh, let me also get your thoughts on the same question here, that I'm drawing your attention to the 2017 verdict of the Supreme Court, where it held that, in fact, Aadhaar, the use of Aadhaar will be limited for public benefits, government schemes, but also at the same time, simultaneously, it declared privacy to be a fundamental right. So even as we are diving headfirst into Digital India vision, the questions that many ask is that, are we exposing citizens to some inherent risks, given as how we don't have a data protection framework in place? We were nearing one, but there were some apprehensions that the government felt on the startup front. And for that and for other reasons, it's been taken back to the drawing board. Your quick thoughts on the urgency that one needs to show in terms of having a data protection framework?
See, first and foremost, as far as Aadhaar is concerned, the usage of Aadhaar is clearly defined by the Aadhaar Act and the Supreme Court judgment therein, which says that it can be used for government benefits, number one. And number two, voluntary use of Aadhaar is permitted, wherein the consent of citizen is taken for whether he wants to give his Aadhaar for any public service or not. So that debate is very clear. When it comes to with regard to the risks that are associated with Aadhaar, I would say that in spite of lot of doubts being raised and speculation being raised by vested interests, so far in the last 11 to 12 years of Aadhaar's existence, we began in 2009 and the first Aadhaars were rolled out in 2010. In the last 12 years of Aadhaar's existence, there has not been a single breach of Aadhaar database, and there has not been a single instance wherein anybody has lost anything because of any flaw in the Aadhaar architecture or Aadhaar database or other systems. In the same time, there have been many other systems built by the best of the IT companies in the world. There have been breaches, there have been data loss, there has been data theft, there have been identity theft, all kinds of things happen with the best of the banks, the best of the public platforms. So Aadhaar is fully secure. Aadhaar has offered lots of services, just direct benefit transfers. More than 25 billion rupees of direct benefit, 25 trillion rupees of benefits have been transferred through direct benefit transfers. In the pandemic, we were able to do this easily. I was in a panel with CIOs, global CIOs, and I was told that the United States, the so-called developed country, is struggling to track the pandemic checks that they issued to as pandemic relief. They gave $400 billion of pandemic relief through paper checks and plastic checks. Sure. And they're not able to track where it went. So Aadhaar is fully secure. It has resulted in a lot of benefits, fully voluntary. With regard to the need for a data protection bill, yes, we do need a data protection bill, but having a data protection bill is not the solution of all the public service delivery issues which are there. Sure. It ensures that everybody who is dealing with your data is made accountable, and you have a right to know who is using your data for what purpose. To that extent, a data protection bill is needed, sure, but not having that has not prevented us from using Aadhaar for empowering people, for delivering services, and for especially during the pandemic.
Mr. Satya, coming to you, same question that we're talking about digital rights here as well as Digital India. Quick question in terms of data protection provisions and the lack of a framework. Would you say that the current safeguards are sufficient in terms of securing the rights of individuals, or is there perhaps the need felt for a very solid data protection framework that will guarantee these digital rights? Mr. Satyanarayana.
Can you, please, Ashwin, can you come again? The audio is not that clear.
Hi, Mr. Satyanarayana. If I can, I'll just repeat the question on the need for a data protection framework that we have been dwelling over and deliberating upon for the last 5 years, have not made much headway, but your quick thoughts on how urgently it's required going forward.
Yeah, I think data protection bill really is need of the hour. There is no doubt about it. And after a lot of deliberations, it has been brought about, and the JPC also has made a number of suggestions. As Abhishek has mentioned, I think a fresh attempt will be made to bring it before the Parliament at the earliest. Because that in the absence of a bill which is overarching in nature and with a regulator in place, in the absence of that, you know, there is a lot of hesitation in terms of using data in the right manner, even though it is for a beneficial purpose. There is a lot of hesitation in sharing of data. So once the bill and the various regulations under that are in place and the machinery is in place, the mobility and the dynamism of the data will increase manifold, and that will be going a long way in realizing the potential of the Digital India.
Sure. Mr. Kaushal, let me come to you. That's of course one challenge that we're going forward in terms of securing digital rights, but like as Mr. Singh said, that's not kept the whole Digital India mission from moving forward. Being a part of that Digital India mission, you've given yourself a target of hitting 100 cities, growing organically. How far ahead have we come in that roadmap, and how much more time will it take for us to hit that target of 100 cities in terms of ONDC, and what are the challenges that you're facing in doing so?
Let me put a context right for you. See, the way ONDC is set up, it's a network.
Sure.
Network means there has to be multiple entities coming together to transact among themselves. There's no central platform. In a normal conventional launch of a bank or a stock exchange or anything, there could be a central platform which is 80% is in your control. Sure. Whereas when you're creating network, you're giving them a language and a grammar and tell everybody to talk. So then it would mean that the one way to test it is to get organically grow more and more people talk. And the scope of ONDC is very, very broad. You know, it could cover commerce, it could cover services, it could cover, even in commerce, there could be on grocery on one side and fashion on the other side. All those things has to happen. So it has to build up. So to make sure that it happens organically, we took up the most challenging part of it. The last mile, which is very challenging, is grocery and food. And we said, let's do it in a very small and steady fashion. Let's first look at 5 cities across the different parts of the country and bring some sellers, some buying platforms, logistics together to transact in a controlled environment. And since it is to have participation for many people, we said, now after having started in 5, let us try to keep on adding those numbers. Because when it comes to grocery, it has to be hyper-local. You can't buy atta from Delhi to Bangalore. Atta in Delhi has to be delivered by a merchant in Delhi. So similarly, we said, let us try to, that is why we put ourselves a target of going broader to have catalysts in every town. Then in some other places we're already again, we are going deeper.
Sure.
So it is not about this some number, because eventually, in grocery, you need to be hyper-local. Let's say in fashion, I can be in Delhi and still supply in Bombay. So it will be, so that way the city presence become relevant. What we are showing that we will demonstrate across some buyers and sellers, and we are getting fantastic participation from big and small in becoming actively integrating their system. For example, if I just give you 2 examples. One, let's say one of our major participant is CSE. When CSE goes live, which is going to happen soon, initially they may make themselves open a little bit, but the moment they feel comfortable, they are present in 5 lakh villages. Suddenly the 5 lakh villages are a part of the ONDC. On both on the seller side and the buyer side. On the buyer side, even in villages, if there are no people do not have the mobile phone, they can give assisted sell, assisted buy. And for the artisans in those villages, they can make it deliver. So that's how the ONDC as a network will explode and grow. So by simply looking at are you in 50, are you in 100, it is not relevant. But we are very much progressing in that way.
Well, would you like to give